Oh.
Hey pickleballers, and welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast. As always, thank you for your likes, comments, subscriptions, share us around, and use code PickleBros at checkout with Carbon Pickleball for 10% off. Today's topic, I'm going to use your guys' silly byline. Give yourself a hand and another hand, because we are talking about the two-handed backhand. Did I pull that off, Tim? Was I cheesy enough for you?
Give yourself a hand, another hand.
There. See, I'm just going to pass off moderator duties to Tim here. Today we're talking about the two-handed backhand, and given our personal recent developments, I'm actually quite excited to talk about it. But first, we have to go into what's your beef. So, Tim, why don't you kick us off today?
All right, I'll kick us off, but it's not going to be on a very high note. So I'm using what's your beef today as more of a therapy session. But I don't expect to get any kind of advice. I kind of just want to be heard. So I take a lot of pride in my agility and my movement, as you guys know. I think I was super flattered, for example, at the PPA when a lady told me after she watched me play that I move around like I'm 18. And I'm 44, and I can't remember ever not having that about me when I play sports. Just, I always move around. I'm always pretty quick and agile. Why are you smiling, Ian?
I know where this is going now. Whoops.
Well, but it's been in the back of my mind that won't last. And then cue Ian earlier this week. He mentioned that his dad was the same way all the way up until he was my age, 44. And just not long after that, he tore his Achilles and he was never the same. And Ian told us that there's a very real possibility that this time next year, some of us will have aged out of our group and we'll have to go find our own guys to play with because we're too rickety and not going to be able to hang with the young guns anymore. And we've got some young guns coming up in our group, and Ian himself is still a young gun. And so I can't say that he's wrong. So I didn't have much of a comeback for any of this other than just to use some sarcasm and make him feel bad about himself because I felt bad about myself after that diatribe. So, I guess my beef is aging. It's kind of like Ian's weather beef from a couple of weeks back.
Yeah,
There's nothing you can do about it.
Solid
beef. So aging is my beef.
Dude, time out. Ian's what, 30? You're not a spring
31.
chicken. Okay, 31. You're not a spring chicken anymore. And Tim, you are you're still on the up and up, bud. You're not even in your prime yet. So I'm with you. I'm against Ian on that.
To only slightly defend myself, because most of what Tim said was quite true and how it came across. The timeline, I didn't say this time next year. I just said in the next 5 years, when Tim turns 50, there's a very real possibility that the dominant freak of nature athlete that he is today is not quite so dominant. That was all I was trying to say. And Jesse's going to be dead before that even happens, though. So.
Oh my God.
Stolp, what's your beef?
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. It reminds me of that Office episode where Michael Scott learns the word ageism, and then we're just throwing it out there. That's so good. So my beef, here's my beef this week. So when your spouse or significant other, or someone in your life takes interest into pickleball, I don't know how you guys respond or others out there respond, but I'm really supportive. I want them to get into this sport naturally and enjoy it and get their friends and community like what we have built naturally. I don't want to involve myself, but really I do, but I won't. So my wife this week went to an open play session, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with open play all levels at Lifetime and how that works. But by description, any level can go and get some playtime and learn and enjoy the game and bring your friends. Well, my wife brought her group of friends last year, and a handful of them bought paddles. They were getting into it, but quickly came to find out there's rules not to play with newbies, and there's like little clicky paddle jumping happening, and they're sitting, two or three of them are sitting in bucket one to go on the court, and they're getting passed over, or you can go play three of you on one court. And so my poor wife comes home and says, what's the deal? Like, it's open play all levels. What do we have to do to like not feel judged and basically booted off the courts? So she came back super discouraged, and now is going to be working to organize a group of 16. She has 16 newbies where they're going to reserve 4 courts, and rightfully so. They have that opportunity to do that. But it's just unfortunate that it has to go down that route. And then inside of this story, I'm hearing there's players that get enjoyment of like beating up on newbies and just flexing their 3.0 muscles, so to speak. And it's just disheartening that when we're trying to grow the sport and engage new people, and I'm not liking the vibe of how a new person can engage into the sport in open play.
It's a rite of passage, unfortunately. I think most of us have been there. I've experienced it. And ironically, the same people that are doing that to her, they're probably around 3.0 or 3.5. They're the same people who complain about people like us when we don't want to play with them. But I'm so glad she found 15 other people, which is pretty amazing. I don't even barely know 15 other people, to play pickleball with her, and I'm sure she'll have a great time.
I do hope so.
It takes guts to show up as the new person who's never done this before. Like, that takes a lot of guts. I'm trying to get Leslie, my wife, to do something similar, but I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that she's found some people that she can do that with.
Yeah, and I'm proud of her too, because she had a couple friends that were signed up but didn't end up going. She stuck to it. She went to it by herself and sat there as the kid not getting picked on the kickball team, just getting passed over. And I can only imagine how that feels. And of course, what is my first reaction? I'm coming out there with you next time, and we'll show them. But she's like, no, that's not the point. She wants to have fun, and I get that. And it's just unfortunate that in an open play setting, there's sandbagging going on, number one, where people are coming down to whoop up on people, and that's not fun. And then hopping over. Like, don't be that person at open play. Like, if you're going to all levels, go to advanced play if you're a 3.5 or higher, and do your thing. But don't hop over the newbies. And Ian, I've seen you in a setting like this. You coach, you welcome people open arms. You're not there to get yourself better. You're there to actually advocate for the game. I've seen that in you.
Well,
I hope that's the point.
Yeah, I do want to say, not to like make me feel all cool. What the problem she's talking about, I know exists. I've never experienced it because everyone is clamoring to play with me. If I go to an open play at 9 a.m. at Lifetime, I'm a duper point or more better than the next best person. But I've seen it. It is a zoo. It's disappointing that there are established rules and they fudge things and they change things. I mean, kudos to Sarah for just continuing to push through, and then even going further on the problem solving, saying, well, I'm just going to start reserving my own courts. Have her text my wife. Rachel has expressed not quite to that level of frustration, but similar difficulties with how open play goes. And before I move on to my beef, there's a meme going around in pickleball social media. I'll say it for the people in the back. Open play is for all play.
Yeah.
Like, so when you're in open play with everybody. Don't dodge. Don't play with your friends. Mix it in as best you can.
Yep, that's my beef.
So that's an excellent beef. My beef. Got to be careful how I say this. We know a lot of tournament directors here in town. One of them particularly stands out amongst the rest as being highly proficient, efficient, fun, just constant success in terms of numbers and participation. And I get frustrated when, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. but why are you going to try and fix it? Because it's not broke. And so we came across this scenario where there was a tournament we were all very excited in, hearing that it was going to be being put on, and then the details come out, and it just didn't meet the needs of our local pickleball community. It wasn't what people want. It's not what draws people in. And we reached out to this tournament director and like, kind of, what are you doing? Why are you changing things up? And it was expressed to us that in some fashion, the tournament director's knees were cut out from under them, and they had to capitulate to the authority figures' vision and desire, and there's nothing they could really do. And the ramifications of that were the tournament was outright canceled, then merged, then has been completely shifted back to the original vision, in which it now looks like the participation is going to go up to where it needs. But I just don't like when you have something that's tried, true, working, especially with pickleball, and then it gets shaken up by people who are classically ignorant of what makes it successful. So, planted my flag. I'm a little frustrated at the lack of logistical success that our favored tournament director is facing, and it's not their fault this time. So that's my beef.
Pretty serious note. I was getting on a little bit of laughter. Like, I don't know how to say this. I thought I was going down a funny path, but then dead serious. Good beef though this week, and you're right. Like, you always heartache goes to those tournament directors that put time, effort into a vision that works well, and then it just gets undercut. So that's a good beef, Ian. Well done.
Awesome. Thank you. Jesse, cap us off.
All right. So my beef has to do with court space at Lifetime. And I should just preface my remarks by saying that we all love Lifetime. They're really doing a great job. They provide excellent facilities. They're open at 5 a.m., which hardly anybody else is. But I remember not so long ago, in the deep dark days of early 2022, before they even had dedicated pickleball courts, and at that time it was basically just me and sometimes my wife, and we would set up a portable net and play on tennis courts, and it was really just the one or two of us. And then fall of 2022, you guys joined, and then ever since it's been a really steady growth, I would say month over month. And now at this point, even though it's September and the weather is really nice, we're able to consistently draw 12 4.5 players in the morning at 5 a.m. And usually on top of that, there's other people playing as well or wanting to play. And I made a little chart here of what it looks like on a typical morning. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is our Lifetime setup. There are 8 tennis courts. The big squares, big rectangles are tennis courts.
Oh, this is brilliant.
And the one up in the left-hand corner is our pickleball courts. They put 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. And this is what it looked like yesterday. So you can see there's 4 players on courts 1, 2, and 3, and then me and Stolp. We'll talk more about Stolp's reintroduction to the game later in the podcast, but we were drilling. So there was 4, 8, 12, 14 of us playing on that court. And then if you look at the rest of the court, the tennis courts, there was like a handful of people. This guy's drilling, this one's empty, a couple people playing singles, and that's pretty typical. I don't know if it looked exactly like this yesterday, but you kind of get the idea. So most of the players, in other words, are pickleball players, not tennis players. But most of the court space is dedicated to tennis. And we're coming up on winter here in a couple months, and it's just obvious to me that we could fill another 4 courts in the winter easily, right? And what is more valuable to Lifetime, to have 16 more players playing pickleball, or like one dude drilling on a tennis court? And I get it. It's costly to build more courts and time consuming, but I've asked them, could they at least tape up one of the tennis courts and provide us with 2 additional pickleball courts. That's how it used to be before there were pickleball courts. There was one tennis court where you had lines taped for pickleball courts. And so far the answer has been, I guess, no. I mean, they're looking into it, but no promises for sure. And so that's my beef. I would like to see Lifetime continue to grow its infrastructure to accommodate the booming demand for pickleball courts and not be stuck in early 2022.
That's great. Yeah. They have a chance. Lifetime has a chance to, I mean, nationally, I think they're poised to do this, but certainly here in the local scene, they can monopolize the pickleball scenario if they would just watch your 3-slide PowerPoint presentation and derive their next steps from there.
And just think about the numbers: 32 players with 32 memberships at 5 a.m. versus, I thought your slide was generous with the amount of tennis players you have. That must have been at 7:30. I thought that was 7:30 a.m. because at 5 a.m. there's one, maybe 2 people, tennis players that is, at that point when we're knocking around pickleballs, 16 of us.
Raphael is drilling, and then there's the other 2 dudes, the far court, who are playing. And that's generally all I ever see at 5 a.m.
That's it. Exactly. So, I mean, think of it. 32 memberships at 5 a.m. That has to account for a ton of money. And that's just from 5 to 7 a.m. Like, we're not talking about the rest of the day, which I'm sure they could do the same thing, because I know the demand for the courts is insane.
Excellent beefs, you guys. Probably our best beef day yet, mostly because I didn't drop the ball this time. But as Jesse alluded to, I'm so pumped for this. The glorious return of one Eric Stolpinator Stolp. Eric, just giving it to you. Talk about it, brother.
Let's talk about it. So let's 10 weeks out from live liver donation as of today, 10 weeks. Doctors gave clearance between 10 and 12 weeks, see how I'm feeling. Resume light activity. So Jesse and I took to the court yesterday to do some drilling. And gosh, if you ever get a chance to drill with one Jesse Malkin, he is just an absolute gem to work you back well, first of all, work your game up to the next level. But for me, it was work me back into shape with my touch, feel, lateral movements. And his drilling game is tight. And I was trying to pull excuses out because he was whooping my butt on everything. We did skinny singles, we did 7-11, we did sniper, we did dinking drills, and every aspect. He's whooping up on me, but he's giving me compliments, making me feel good about myself. But I was like, Jesse, this just doesn't feel natural in the game of doubles. I don't think this is good for you. He's like, well, actually, it's probably pretty good for you to understand and learn. And he, of course, was right. I was just trying to divert some of the, my non-success off of myself with excuses. So we started there, but Jesse quickly realized my eyes were locked on the 3 other courts that had games going on. We had 12 players, high-level players there in the morning, of which they're all my best friends, basically, where we were hugging each other beforehand. And then, Jesse's noticing my attention drifting. And so Tim, my man Tim over here, Jesse and Tim got together, and he raised his hand and he sat out. He was on Champions Court, so King's Court, top of the court. So here I am, Jesse gave me he's my doctor's approval, gave me the nod. Okay, you're good to get in there. Tim stepped out. I'm on King's Court, after 10 weeks off. And so here we go. And you guys, it was so glorious. I got a handful of games in. Won some, we lost some, and I'm happy to report my game had not degraded as far off as I thought it would. Certainly there's some aspects that require fine-tuning, like return of serve, namely that, the touch there. Backhand dinking is going to take a second. But my forehand touch and some of my attacking components and mentality and shot selection still were there. My hands were still fast. I still had some winners where I'd do a step back and then hit it towards the baseline down the middle of the court where it frees our 2 opponents. And so I did a lot of that. And we had some laughs. We had some hugs, high fives. We had some screams. We had one controversial event that happened.
This part of your game has not returned.
So I've gone on record being deemed unlobbable in competitive play, and there was a match between Tim and Jared, so the guy in the blue shirt over here, and Tim were on a team versus Ian and I, and Tim tries this lob. He tries a lob, tries to get it over me. And here's how it went from my side of the story. He puts together this haphazard lob. I'm salivating as it's arcing at its apex. Can't wait to destroy this thing and hit a hole through something, whether it's my paddle or leave a hole in the court across the net. I take a mighty swing at it and miss. My calibration was off. I blame it on 10 weeks of not being on the pickleball court. The lights the lights were a little brighter in this particular morning. So on me, I missed. My partner Ian goes into laughter mode and just starts laughing hysterically, and the ball bounces twice, even though it bounced probably 5 feet up off of the ground at the middle of the court where he had a chance to get behind it and hit it. So by my rule, if you do not hit a lob and can't get to it and it counts as a point, that's a successful lob. So by definition, let the record state, that was true. That happened. However, through debate across the rest of the day from everybody in our pickleball group, this was highly debated with diagrams, first person accounts, stories and narratives from all parties involved, and it was decided by people outside of myself that there was joint responsibility between me and Ian, because Ian, as a partner, quit his partner duties the second that ball hit over me, because I think he was in on it, wanting to see this, and he forgot his responsibility to get behind the ball even after I missed when he had the chance to. And so this one goes down as a missed lob opportunity for me, but Ian's on the hook as well. So
how the rest of you knuckleheads landed on me being responsible for you whiffing a lob, I still have yet to understand, and am seething over it. So
I think we'll have a portion at the end of today's show where one of our good buddies, Jared, who has the POV account, he lays out a great diagram explaining things through a video and bullet points and figure A's, B, and C, and like a lot of different things. Can we roll that at the end of today, just to, if people want to hang on and take a look, and then you make the decision on who was right and wrong? Get it from an outside source, not Ian or I. But Ian, I'm saying that was a missed lob on you. If I was right in that step.
Such a load of crap. I can't believe I just sat here and listened to that. And I sat around all day yesterday and listened to this back and forth of excuse making and just lack of accountability on the guy that got lobbed, on the part of the guy that got lobbed. And it's such a sad thing that this had to happen on Stolp's return day. I mean, I blame myself for even attempting this on the day that should have been just full of happiness. And it was full of happiness. But now we're throwing dirt on the whole experience with this excuse making and just the finger pointing and the diagrams, which are ridiculous but hilarious. And I do encourage people to stick around and look at that, because I was literally in tears. Oh my gosh. But dude, you didn't whiff at the ball as if it was like in the strike zone. You whiffed at it because it was out of reach, because it was a perfect lob. This lob would have beaten Ben Johns. And Ian, you are a little bit culpable for just standing there, but I don't blame you for standing there, because this is a never before seen thing that occurred on your court. I don't blame you. I would have done the same thing. As a matter of fact, that's what I did. I stood there and watched because it was a thing of beauty, because I couldn't not look at it. All right. So I encourage everyone to stick around afterwards and enjoy this thing. But I wish we had video footage, because there would be no debate if you saw this thing. If you're actually able to see this thing transpire, there would be no debate. It's like, oh, dude, that's an awesome lob. I don't
hate
blame
all of
Stolp at
this.
all.
I hate all of
I don't
this.
even blame Ian because that's a perfect shot. All right, I'm done. Let's just move on to the topic.
No, let's
Oh,
not.
oh.
Ian, go ahead and defend yourself for a
All
second.
right. First of all, the lob was 3.2 level. It was 7 feet off the kitchen line, which is only 7 feet off the net. It was 14 feet off the line. Stolp had to take 2 of his gigantic albatross steps backwards to be in perfect position. And I was watching him, and I was salivating, feasting on the next words that I was going to say, which was, Tim, he's still unlobbable, even on his first day back. You're never going to. I was ready to just come at Tim, give him all the crap, because, 4.7 duper, whatever Stolp is, you imagine he's going to put away an overhead that is literally tailor-made for him. And then that catapult arm, that giant albatross wing, swipes. And then he looks, where's the ball? He can't find it. He turns around. He trips over his own ankle. He goes down. And then I start laughing hysterically. Because not only did you look like a drunk baby giraffe, but the pendulum going from Tim's humiliation to Stolp's humiliation was too good. And yes, perhaps I could have, hurtled over you and made a scramble play on the ball. But you were like just a hazard in the middle of the court, laying there, splayed out, helpless, like Christ on the cross. What was I to do? I am not to blame for your ineptitude.
Time out. Did not fall. That was not a thing. Tim recalls that as well. We have different sides to this story, clearly, as you can see. But we did hear a couple things that that we heard. He could have got to the ball. Ian said that. And it was a crappy lob. Ian said that. Both true things. Tim, let's not talk about what you did or tried to do, but the fact that you were willing to lob over someone who was 9 weeks and 6 days post-surgery, first time out on the court. Do we want to talk about that? Do we want to go down that path? But no, this is Tim will lob your grandma for a point, okay? So that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And that's why we had to bring others involved, or others in on this, including Jared, and including non-participants in this discussion to make their own decision. I want our listening audience to give us their thoughts, because anyone who knows me or doesn't know me knows I'm not going to miss a freaking 3.25 lob. Like, that's just not a thing. So I did miss it because my calibration was off. That was me, but it shouldn't have been a point because Ian should have got it. All right, now we can move on.
Gosh, Jesse, do you have anything to add to this nonsense?
I will say there's only one person on this podcast who I'm afraid to lob over, and it's not you, Ian, and it's not Stolp.
Ooh, there's only one guy left.
Good man. All right, let's give ourselves a hand and another hand, because we're going to start talking about the two-handed backhand. And by the way, funny enough, for those of you listeners who like to get around to the other podcasts, Pickleball Studio just released their I Hit 15,000 Two-Handed Backhands episode last week.
Great video.
Yeah, excellent video. Like Chris did a wonderful job, but it might seem like we're piggybacking on that topic. We decided we were going to talk about this 4 weeks ago. So I found it amusing that he releases his big two-handed backhand video like just days before we're going to do this.
Right, so who leaked our episode idea?
I mean, it's got to be Stolp or Jesse, because it wasn't me, and I know Tim would never do such a thing.
I don't listen to the other podcasts. You kidding me? I'm loyal to one and one only, and that's the
Right.
PickleBros.
So our pulse is on the heart of pickleballdom at large, but this will be a cool compliment, I suppose, to what Pickleball Studio put out. But first we can start with who uses the two-handed backhand in our group. I do. Jesse, Tim.
I do.
No Stolp, not yet. So I'm going to say I was the first bro to use a two-handed backhand. I've had it for well over a year. I don't have a tennis background. I just saw a lot of the pros using it. And truth be told, our game speed, it's slower than the pro women, but their game speed is closer to ours than what the men do. And so I was watching a lot of the women play, and a lot of them are using this two-handed backhand to great effect. And I was like, well, I'm basically useless from the baseline with my backhand. What if I tried this? So I watched a lot of Annalie Waters on YouTube and self-taught myself the two-handed backhand to the point where a lot of people often ask me, "Did you play tennis? Man, your two-handed backhand's really good." It's like, no, I just watched a lot of YouTube and did a lot of copying Annalie Waters. But Tim is, I guess, the more less recent than me, but than Jesse. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, just so I'd say I was probably the first bro to use a two-hander. I just wasn't using it on a paddle. I've been using the two-hander in tennis for 35-ish years because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm quite old. And so when I took up this sport of pickleball, I just realized, man, it's so much easier to use a one-hander than it was in tennis. So I kind of enjoyed that because obviously the paddle is quite a bit shorter. It's not as heavy. So I started to mimic the likes of Roger Federer with my paddle, and I started really enjoying hitting the one-hander, and it was really successful. I really loved hitting my one hand on the backhand side. And I would use it in singles. I'd use it in doubles. It got the statue thing going as a thing. But actually, Ian, it wasn't until, and I never understood, why would you put a second hand on this little paddle? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's so easy to hit it with one hand. So why wouldn't you just use a one-hand backhand? But it wasn't until you encouraged me to trade up paddles and get a better paddle. I used to use, I think you guys called it like a block of wood or something. My gearbox paddle had no power at all. So when I was experimenting with new paddles, I got a hold of one, the Carbon Electrum, and I could not control that thing at all. It just had too much pop. So I actually, we're over in Utah, I think. We were visiting my brother, and we had like 6 people playing that day. So me and Jared shifted over to another court and started playing some singles. And I whipped out my two-hand backhand. I'm like, oh, well, this is the exact same shot I've always hit in tennis. And I was like immediately successful with it. It felt the way it always had in tennis. It was the exact same thing. And so, sorry.
And you were grossly successful with it right away. Like, actually, I'm still mad at you for how good you got with it so quickly, given that you've been using it for over a year.
Right. So I wanted to incorporate it into doubles because I was pretty excited with how good it felt, but I still like my one-hander too. So it became a challenge of, okay, when do I use one hand? When do I use two hands? And I'm still kind of trying to decide on that one. But I have come to the conclusion that a two-hander is great when you're able to set up. It's great from the backcourt, and it's great on the step back. I still use a one-hander on the step back, but I can also use a two-hander. What it's not good at, and it's what, I guess I differ with the likes of Annalie Waters when it comes to the volleys. I don't like to swing at a volley with two hands. I find that you lose a little bit of reach in that regard. You can't do the Stolp thing where you reach all the way into the kitchen as far as you can and take that thing early. You really need one hand for that. And then the slice, I will do a lot of slice returns of serve. That is way better with one hand. And I still have the statue, as I mentioned, with the one hand. But so I'm still trying to decide exactly when to bring it out. It's awesome in singles, but I definitely like to drive my thirds with two hands. I never use one hand anymore on my drive. So it's awesome. It really is a weapon. I hit clean winners with it pretty often when I'm able to set up with it. I can hit topspin lobs with it. And I'm really curious to hear you guys who haven't been using a two-hander for over 30 years, how you were able to incorporate yours into your games.
Yeah, Jesse, that's a great segue because I think yours is brand spanking new. Your two-handed backhand.
I've been using it for 6 days.
Yep.
Yeah. So I resisted it strongly.
Yes, you did.
You guys kept telling me to try it. See, when I saw you guys doing it, I saw you mainly doing it at the baseline. There's a third shot drive. I'm like, why would I want to learn this shot when I don't drive from the baseline, even with my forehand? Why would I want to drive with my backhand? I drop. So it was just extremely unappealing to me, and I also thought it would take me a long time to learn it. And I was preoccupied with another problem that I've been having, and that is my backhand counters and blocks at the kitchen line. When people speed up to me on my backhand side, it's a problem. I have a good forehand, but this backhand has always been a problem, and I basically felt like I had gone as high as I could go without having a better counter and on the backhand side. So I was like, stop bothering me about this two-handed backhand. I'm trying to fix my counter. Well, come to find out, all the advice I was receiving from coaches and whatnot was, to use a continental grip, and because I use an Eastern grip, and I don't like the continental grip. I mean, it does help with the backhand counter, but the rest of my game became a hot mess. And so my wife said, well, why don't you try a two-hander and see how that goes? And so we drilled a week ago, last Wednesday, for like an hour and a half in our garage. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of liking this. Like, I feel like I can do this. And then I was dinking. I was like, dinking with a two-hander? Like, that's weird. Like, nobody does that. Well, actually, some people do, right? Like Riley Newman and Anna Lee. And yeah,
I backhand dink with two hands.
yeah, and I was kind of liking it. And so I rolled it out last Thursday with our group, and it's definitely it needs some work for sure. I don't have a tennis background. I've never used a two-hander anything. But I really feel if I can get better at this, it's going to help not only with those counters, but also with my dinking. I think I'll be able to become a more aggressive backhand dinker.
Excellent. Stolp, I know you haven't adopted it, but do you have any thoughts on it? Do you want to? What do you see in it?
Yeah, definitely. And Jesse, by the way, I saw the two-hand dinks that we were drilling yesterday, or when you were drilling yesterday, and they were tough to handle. Like there was a couple of them that were angular. There's a couple that were faster and more towards my toes on the kitchen line that made me have to make a quicker decision. I don't know. Keep with that. I'll be interested to see how that develops for you. But yeah, Ian, I'm not opposed to it. Definitely not opposed to it. And actually, one of the things that I'm most interested in why I want to learn it is actually so even yesterday, Jesse was targeting my left shoulder, which was having me to get to my backhand quicker. And so when I'm at the kitchen, in a situation where my left shoulder is targeted, I feel like if I'm two-handed up here, I can attack. I can attack from a two-handed position volley if I learn that. And I've watched actually some clips of the pros as to them getting their backhand up there quick so they can go down the alley when they're in when their left shoulder's targeted at the kitchen. So that's one interest point for me as to why I want to learn, which wasn't brought up by you all, which I found interesting. But that's why I would like to learn it. But here's the problem for me. These things are like the size of frying pans. Like
Jeez, huge.
I can't, like, 4 1/4 grip length on a paddle just does not make sense mathematically to put two hands on this thing unless I manipulate them in a certain way. So I run out of real estate is an issue, and it just feels unnatural to me. So like these switch hitters in baseball, I watch them and it's just like I picked up a bat and swung it both ways. It's just unnatural feeling for me. Not to say that I'm unwilling to learn it, but with my big hands and lack of real estate, it makes me nervous. Plus, it does take your reach away. I can reach with my backhand singularly versus if I put another hand on that, I'm taking, I don't know, 18 inches away potentially so I'm taking one of my skills and eliminating it or changing it, or you know what I mean? So I have a little bit of hesitancy around those things, but I'm not saying that it's not useful for me. I do need to learn it. I haven't yet. And so that's my thought.
You know, I'm trying to find it now. Pickleball Studio came out with, they're making a paddle with a 7-inch grip handle.
There you go.
So, and one of the jokes like, this is not going to be widely used, but it would be useful for guys like you who want to get both hands on there. And even then, you're probably going to have a finger up on the way that I think Tim and I do.
Right.
But like maybe the market is designed for someone specifically,
Well,
like you and mine.
yeah, so someone's making that paddle, and you could try that. The other thing is, there's no rule. I mean, people generally will stack the hands, but there's no rule that says you can't cover one a little bit with the other. I feel like there's too much dogma around the two-handed backhand, and like this coach told me, not Greg Williams, but a coach I saw in Florida, and he's like, you should absolutely not do it because you don't have a tennis background. Dogma. So another thing you often hear is that you have to stack those hands, but there's no rule that says you have to stack the hands. You can do whatever you find comfortable and what meets your needs.
I mean, I don't know if you guys know Hayden Patriquin. I know Jesse will, at least the name. He's a 17, 18-year-old young kid, the youngest guy in the men's tour. He will, maybe Gabe Tardio's younger, but they're both like, phenoms for their age. He'll put his other hand up on like this. So he'll hold it, and his fingers, he won't even be like here. He'll actually have his fingertips on the back of his paddle to help him get some flick. I found it very odd. I thought it would mess with the vibration, like the absorption of the ball, but he's used to it. So like you're saying, there's no surefire, you have to do it this way. But Tim, you pose a good question to me, and it's, why do you think people ignore their backhand and their two-handed backhand specifically?
Yeah, I just think that the idea of throwing another hand on the paddle grip just seems too daunting. And it seems like I think Jesse, when he was expressing reservations about learning how to do it, he just thought, well, I don't have time. Like, that's going to take forever to learn. I'm going to stick with the Continental because at least I understand, the concept. I still only have one hand on the paddle grip. Like, okay, the grip's a little bit different, but it's still the same concept. I would argue that it's harder to change your grip with one hand than it is to throw another hand on it. I think having that left hand on it, or right hand if you're left-handed, just gives you so much more control, and it limits in a good way your radius for your swing, because you can only take the paddle back so far and go forward so far. And so it really helps you control that shot in a way that the one-hander doesn't. And I just think there are a lot of misconceptions out there about the benefits of a two-hander. I think it's wild that a coach would be like, you don't want to do that because you don't have a tennis background. I'm like, really? So we can't learn things in pickleball? Like,
Not if you're over 44.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I came into this with some knowledge already. But Jesse, I'm curious to hear how long it took you before you felt good hitting that.
I drilled for an hour and a half with Michelle, my wife, and then I played with you guys the next morning. And, I admit I apologized to my partner a couple times, for errors. And even now, closing in on a week, I think my dinking is less consistent than it used to be. But, I basically played at a 4-5 level. I was winning and both losing and winning games last week using the two-handed backhand, like, constantly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Tim, as you were going there, you were talking about people's not being comfortable with that left hand being a part of what's going on the paddle. Like, do you guys think that the two-handed backhand requires any level of ambidextrousness? What do you think, Jess?
Absolutely not, because I'm very, very right hand dominant. I've been tested for it in physical therapy, and they were like, "Oh wow, you're really right side dominant."
Tim, do you have any? Because what I know for myself, I'm pretty ambidextrous. I actually believe I was left-handed growing up, but I have a twin brother, and I started copying him right-handed. But we have old footage of me 3 years old and younger. I was drawing left-handed. I was throwing left-handed. Everything was left-handed. So I'm actually even when I do a left-handed switch, sometimes I have a higher success rate than many. And so for
You
me,
do a left-handed switch?
I don't do it as much anymore because I've actually, when you have deficiencies, you make up for them. Like our buddy Sean Hatch, and I've been giving him a hard time about this. If he gets beat to his behind him, he won't switch to the backhand. He'll switch to the left for a left hand forehand. And I don't think it's ideal. But I used to do the same thing. I don't get beat as much in that way anymore, just because you get better. Or if I do get beat to that side, it's because it's an outright winner. So I don't even have time to switch anymore. But I used to do it a lot, and I had a lot of success with it. And I'm very left hand comfortable when I play. Even when I play my wife and my daughters, I like sometimes switch left handed, and it's ugly as crap, but I can get it done. Like, so Tim, do you have any left handedness in you to make
No,
this work?
zero. I can't even wave with my left hand. Like I can't do anything. So what's cool though is with a two-hander, like you really feel a difference. Like that left hand is doing something that really adds some pop and some control. And it's probably the most useful I've been able to make my left hand in anything that I've ever done. So I don't know. I just think that people need to stop ignoring their backhand. I mean, I play with people. There's one guy in particular that I'm thinking of that he will, I don't know how many steps he gets in when he plays pickleball just by running around his forehand to hit or running around his backhand to hit a forehand. Like he looks ridiculous. And he's actually a pretty good player too. And I'm just like, what is it about backhands that just terrify people? And I just wonder if some of these coaches and pros are giving bad advice because they never learned to hit a backhand themselves. So they have no idea how to speak to it. But it's not difficult. Like I try to explain this to people. There's one guy that we play with who has sort of a choppy motion on his backhand that I tried. I went over to him one morning and showed him how to hold it, how I hold it for a two-hander. And he drilled that two-hander for the rest of the morning, and he looked really good doing it. Now
I've never seen it since.
I haven't seen him break it out since, so maybe he needs another lesson. But I swear, if people would just get over the stigma of, oh, it's too hard to learn. Oh, it's going to take forever. It's really not. I think it's harder to learn a new grip, and it's certainly harder to not learn a backhand at all, because I think that is just an unrealistic approach to the game.
So I'm curious. Okay, so someone like me who has no experience in trying or using a two-handed backhand, what is the first thing I need to do? I mean, to drill this, like you talked about grip, like walk me through what a two-hand backhand should look like and feel like.
Well, talking about the grip, I don't think that you need your second hand on the paddle grip necessarily. Like Ian was saying, we have a couple of fingers that's actually on the paddle itself. I don't even think about it. You just want to hold it in such a way that feels kind of comfortable, and then swing with it. And it's a baseball swing, so you should understand that, Stolp. It's really compact. That's what I love most about the two-hand backhand. It's compact. There's very little margin for error. You're going to hit that thing pretty consistently well every single time as long as you set up for it. There's footwork involved. With a forehand, you're planting your left foot. With a backhand, you're planting your right foot. But it's the same movement. It's just reversed. But I think you just need to get out there and hit a bunch of balls like the guys on the other podcast did. But I think you'll surprise yourself how good it feels and how natural it feels pretty quickly.
And I know, Stolp, your finger is already, because you kind of hold your grip a little bit more vertically. Your finger is already creeping on your paddle, which tells me something about you just in my mind that I know is true for me. The closer I can get that ball to my hand, the more accurate, more comfortable I feel. Now, unfortunately, on just about every paddle, that's the dead spot right at the throat, right where the grip meets the neck of the paddle. And so when I've got my two-handed grip and I just throw on my other hand, right, it's kind of like this. Mm-hmm. These fingers are sitting probably just coming out of that dead zone into the sweet spot, and I'm able to feel that. And I basically I don't think of it quite this way, but that ball is like just above my fingers on the other side of the paddle. and I feel like it's right there in the middle of my hands. And so when Tim's talking about compact, he's talking about the swing, but I feel like everything is tight and small, and it's right by my fingers. It's like if I just took my palm and was able to slap the ball. Like you tennis players, Tim, I haven't played. I've never even tried tennis. Actually, you and I should go out and try it sometime. I'd be curious. But I've picked up a tennis racket, and it is bewildering to me how far away the head of the paddle is from my hand. And to get comfortable with that spatial distance, I'm like, God, geez, I would be whiffing at half the balls I swung at. So getting that ball closer to my hands is a lot more comfortable, and I think how I was able to adapt to learn it so quickly.
I'd like to reply to you, Stolp, as well. So my advice is not to see a coach, because the coach will probably just tell you not to do it. My advice is to watch some videos on YouTube, spend half an hour watching those. They'll explain how to set it up. And then I would go to a wall and just drill against the wall for 15, 20 minutes. And then I would find a drilling partner. And I would not start with the baseline drive, because that's a really advanced shot that you don't necessarily need in your repertoire. I would start with dinking and volleys at the kitchen line and blocks.
100%. And just like, I mean, Jesse brought up the guy, the coach from Florida, and we've been, and again, right there, it's like, don't go see a coach about it. I think a lot of these coaches, they get caught up in, you don't need a tennis background in order to learn a two-handed backhand. In fact, when people go to tennis and learn two-handed, it's just where, at least traditionally up to this point, the two-handed has been coming into the game, into sports at all. People don't have it there. They learn it in tennis. So you can come in and learn it in pickleball. I've got zero tennis background, and I learned it watching Annalie Waters on YouTube and played with a guy named Mike McGregor, who played a ton of ping pong. And he will purposely run around his forehand to hit with his backhand. And his play style is pretty unconventional. He changes his level so well, great footwork, and he's bounding all over the court while staying two-handed. So it's Riley Newman-esque, in which he's got great athleticism, great movement, but his arms are locked in tight. But that two-handed is so deadly. But he didn't play any tennis either. He was all ping pong. So it's definitely not required. Now we're pushing up on time, so we should just move a little bit quicker. But I want to talk about the two-handed backhand in singles. Is it required in singles, or is it only good in singles? Like, Tim, I would say of the group here, you're by far the strongest singles player. Talk about the two-handed and singles.
Well, again, I never really gave it much thought to incorporate a two-hander at all, because I just thought, wow, this is so much easier than it was in tennis to hit a one-hand backhand. But I started doing it up in Utah, like I said before, and I came back here, and I hadn't been that successful of a singles player when I first moved to Colorado Springs. I actually was very successful in Georgia, but I came here and the competition was pretty fierce. You know, we have the likes of Louis hanging around, and Matt Jones, Nick Patterson. Those guys are really good at singles, and I was frustrated because I was not reaching the medal rounds of tournaments. I was like, what is this? And so I came back with a two-hander, and suddenly I'm just hitting clean winners, like just left and right with that two-hand backhand. And I know that, not everybody plays singles, kind of a niche thing in pickleball. But I tell you, it's a great training ground for some shots that you can utilize in doubles. And it helps with your movement. I'm not here to be a spokesperson for singles necessarily, but I do think it's a great way to train yourself if you're interested in learning a two-hand backhand. Playing singles is a great way to do it, because I try some of the exact same shots in doubles that I've perfected in singles. And my singles duper has jumped up. I'm like a 5.2 now, and it feels pretty legitimate because that two-hander, I owe it all to the two-hander.
Yeah, you're able to hit those hard angles going both ways. Jesse, can you talk about, in your mind, and I know that the two-handed is most new to you, where on the court is it going to be the most beneficial? Because it's certainly not just from baseline play, which is what you're going to see in tennis. Like, what are all like the top 3 scenarios that it should be used? And we've already touched a couple of them, but just kind of highlight it.
So first of all is the backhand counter and the backhand block. When somebody speeds up to my backhand, to be able to block those proficiently. Like before I could block at maybe a 3-5 level. Too many of those were popping up. And now, not only can I block them pretty low some of the time, but I can sometimes, if it's just a little elevated, I can attack it, which I never really did before. So that's why I decided to learn it, was to try to fix this defect in my game.
So for you, it's at the net.
Right.
For me, I cannot backhand dink with one hand. Like it's pretty bad. But as soon as I put on that stabilizing second hand, I become very formidable. Now I have to move my feet more to get around it because the reach is shortened, and that's a problem for me. I need to be a little bit less lazy. But I there's no one in this group that I can actually dink with for a prolonged period of time at a competitive 4-5 plus level and not hit something that is attackable, that gets sped up at my partner if I'm dinking with a one hand backhand. It's just bad. But as soon as I told myself I'm just going to put 2 on, the stability's there, the top spin is there, that lift is there. So at the net for counters, at the net for dinking, Tim went through from the baseline for singles. Stolp, is there anything you have to add? Is there anywhere you don't want to see it because you're not using it yet?
Yeah, so I don't know about where I want to see it, but I think what I took away from something Tim said was he drilled with a guy who picked it up the first time. They hit a bunch of balls and it looked good by the end of it, but then he never saw it again. I think of my Ernie development and learning where I drilled it and then I took that into my play sessions. And if you're going to commit to learning any new shot, you have to commit to using it, even if it's not perfect. So what I'm hearing, Ian, is if I want to commit to this, I'm going to drill it, and then I need to take it into my gameplay. And I think that's sound advice for anyone trying to learn any new shot. You're not going to be perfect at it. You're not going to understand its mechanics like through and through, but you need to drill it to feel what it feels like, and then you actually need to use it in a game. And yeah, you might not win, but it's think of it as a competitive drilling session, because I think we get away from that as pickleball developers or learners. We're trying to get better, but we're not utilizing the new skills that we're figuring out. So if you're going to learn a two-handed backhand, if I'm going to commit to it, I want to feel it, and then I want to use it. I don't want to be the guy that does it one time and forgets about it. I want to continue to grow my arsenal and then utilize it.
Awesome. I love it, guys. Well, that just about wraps us up. Listeners, please stick around after the outro for your credits scene, your end credit scene. We're going to give you a taste of the nonsense that we've been dealing with all yesterday over the glorious return and the lob controversy. But thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, message us, share us around. We appreciate you guys so much. We love doing this. We love hearing from you guys. Stay safe and stay out of the kitchen. Although the kitchen is no longer safe because now Jesse's got a two-handed backhand and Stolp has returned. 2 guys at the net. Jesse's two-hander and the albatross touching the net without having kitchen violations. He's back. So stick around, guys.
Roll the tape.
Roll the tape.
Don't worry, everyone. I'm here to weigh in to give the insight that's needed for the lob that happened today. So if you'll direct your attention to what I've created. As you can see, the liver weighs 3 pounds. Stolp gave half, so he lost 1.5 pounds of weight that he's used to carrying when he jumps. You need to take that into consideration. The liver is also located on the upper right side of the body. Stolp is right-handed, so the torque he's used to has now become easier since he's lighter. Now that you... Also, take into consideration being out 10 weeks, he hasn't calibrated that change yet. Now, if you'll direct your attention to figure 1, as you can see, this is the lob hit from my point of view. Tim hits the ball, and he starts jumping up and down because he's excited. The ball travels up at this angle, and it's getting ready to come this way. Stolp is bewildered that a lob has been attempted. Ian is also bewildered and just watching, which is explained here. Next, as Stolp prepares to hit, the wind flow from Tim's hit pushes on Stolp's paddle. Enter Newton's second law. The ball is traveling with topspin, pushing it this way. Stolp's paddle is here, getting ready to hit, going to be pushing this way. Using Newton's second law, force equals mass times acceleration. If we assume that the ball weighs about 1.02 ounces, and that a ball on average can be hit anywhere between 25 to 40 miles per hour, if we conservatively pick the speed at which Tim probably hit the ball, well, let's just say 30 miles an hour, you come out to about 3.12 ounces of force on that ball, which is what Stolp has to now counter the hit with. But you have to factor in that he's now lighter as he tries to take a lob, and he hasn't calibrated the fact that he's lighter, so it makes it harder for him to actually hit. Now, in figure 3, you can see Stolp's face because he's bewildered and excited that he gets to hit this lob. The ball, if you will, follow my finger, is coming like this to closer and closer to his paddle. Stolp is so excited that, as mentioned before, not being calibrated, the force of his swing ends up being faster than the incoming ball, which causes the miss. In figure 4, we have Stolp laying on the floor after he falls from missing the overhead, and we have Ian. Kind of looks like a pumpkin. We have Ian, who's dying of laughter, with Stolp being on the floor after missing the lob. As you can see here, Ian doesn't come across as a partner should because Stolp is on the floor. Stolp is a hazard, and Ian doesn't want to trip, and Ian is also dying of laughter. In summation, nothing could be done to counter Tim's incredible lob. It was what it is, and is what it is.